Alright, this is the second in a series of 3 programs on how to use lists to create plots and then overall graphing on the graphing calculator. So if you remember in last lesson we figured out how to populate lists, and today we're going to, or this lesson rather, it's the same day for me, we're going to write a program that will ask for points and automatically plot them. And this is an example. I generated these 6 points to graph. So we're going to create a new program and we're going to call it point plotter, point plotter, and in the nature of all things internet, we'll omit the E there, point plotter. And I'm going to do my same 3 lines that I always do. Clear home, display my name, and of course you are watching a video by the Math Prophet. Maybe I didn't have alpha lock on there. I'm going to edit point plotter. By TMP. And then let a pause there, let them know, hey, if you want, you need to press enter. A little bit delay. All right, so what we need first of all from the user is to ask for how many points we need. And then we need to clear the lists and put the X data in L1, the Y data in L2, and then we need to plot them. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask for number of points, num of points, a little bit of delay there, num of points, and I'm going to store that in n. I'm going to clear the list. If you remember that, it's under stat, clear lists. Now I actually need to clear 2 lists, and I can do that by doing L1, comma, L2. So number of points is n, clear list, L1 and L2. So now I need to run a loop that will ask for x, y, x, y, x, y, x, y, x, y, x, y. And you can do this 2 ways. You can ask for first point, second point, and then next point, next point, next point. And that's what we're going to do. If you want to, you can just write, you don't need these first pieces here. But I'm going to do that just because I think it makes a neater, cleaner program. So I'm going to, I don't need the second pushed, program, input, alpha lock, first, x, value, first, x, value, and then I will store that in A, and then I'm just going to take A and I'm going to store that right into L1, 1. L1 is going to keep track of our x values, and L2 is going to keep track of our y values. I don't know if you could omit and just put L1, 1 right here, something you could try. But I know that this will work. I'm going to do the same thing, but instead of y, instead of x, I'm going to use y. Instead of a, I'm going to use b. And instead of L1, I'm going to do L2 here. If you want, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can do that by yourself. Alright, so I'm going to do input, F-I-R-S-T, first, y, value, and I'm going to store that in B, and then I'm going to turn around and put that right into L2, and that's the first element. Alright, so now I want to create a for loop. So I collected this point, and I need to get the rest of them. And again, I'm using a for loop because I know how many points I'm going to do. If you want, you can redo this to put in an exit. So if they if x equals 9999, then it will automatically exit the for loop. Otherwise, you can keep going on to the number of points. I've seen that strategy before. I think it's a little more confusing for the 8th grade level, as that's what this is written for, but if that's what you want to do. Okay, so we have the first x, we have the first y. I'm going to put a space there just because I like to do that. For, and I like to use w, or I've been using w. Now here's the thing. It's not our first point because we put that here. So we're not going to actually start w counting at 1. We're going to start at w counting at 2. And it's going to go up to n because that's the number of points we have. So for that, we want to basically copy this code right here, but instead of first y value and first x value, it's going to be next x value, next y value. So program input, and I have next, whoops, didn't get the n, ne, next x value, question mark, quotations, comma, alpha a, and then I want a, stored it in L1, and now because this is changing, because it's inside a for loop, we're actually going to use our counter variable there, so that's w, and so do the same thing for y. Program input next y value question mark, excuse me, and comma, and that's going in B, and I'm storing B right into W and end. Now, oops, I need to put the end down there. So before we get into the plotting, I want to test this just to make sure this works. And so I'm going to run my program point plotter. It's by me. Number of points, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 points. First x value is negative. Make sure you use that negative value. 2. First y value is negative 2 as well. Next x value is negative 2. Whoops. Negative 2. And then negative 6. And then 1, 6, 3, 5, 7, 8. This should be the last one. 1, negative 8. Let's see if it gives me a done. Perfect. Now, to make sure that it stored everything correctly, we're going to go into looking at my lists here. And I see I have negative 2, negative 2, negative 2, negative 6. 1, 6, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 1, negative 8. So we are good. We have all the points stored. I just like to test every once in a while in some of these longer programs to make sure that everything is working correctly. So now I'm going to go back in. I know that there are no bugs up through now. Excuse me. All right. Now comes the new part, the really new part here. So we are going to plot points, and this function is under the stat plot of the graphing calculator. So you see y equal, and the next video we're going to deal with y equals, but this video we're going to look at stat plot. And you can see down here I included what we're going to do. Plot 1 is our stat plot. The type, we're going to make a scatter plot because we have a bunch of points. Our x data is in L1, our y data is in L2, and then it wants to know what kind of mark are we doing. So right here, I'm going to put second y equals. I want to put plot 1. I want to store this into plot 1. All right, then I'm going to go back up here. What type of plot do I want? I want a scatter plot, comma. My x data is in L1. My y data is in L2. And if I just do this, I think it will error. I need to have a mark. And you can choose the square, the plus, or the dot. I'm partial to the square simply because then I can see if a line of best fit goes right through the square, but it doesn't matter. Do that, and then we're going to close. All right, that's not enough, it turns out. Excuse me. We also, whoops, I need to go back to my program. I must have quit out. Go down to the bottom. We need to make sure of two things. We need to make sure our window is correct, and we need to make sure that it is on. So what we need to do is we need to go to, I don't know if you saw this when we did this, when we did plot 1. We have plots off here, plots on. We need to make sure plots are on. Plots on. And we need to make sure the window is correct. And the way you can do that is the zoom. Now, I teach my students, not just in my 8th grade programming class here, but also my AP statistics class. When in doubt, go ahead and use zoom stat, because the calculator is kind of smart. In the next video, we'll look at how to control the window. And we're going to use a menu, and that will be a really long program. It'll be a lot of fun. But right now, we're going to use zoom stat. So let's press the zoom button. Then we'll go down here. There's actually a lot more zoom functions available when you're programming than when you're normally just looking at it. But we want zoom 9, zoom stat. All right. So now let's run it. See what we get. All right, press enter. Now number of points I have is 6. First x value is -2, -2. Then my next x value, -2. Y value is -6. And then I have 1, 6. Then I have 3, 5. Then I have 7, 8. And I have 1, -8. And there we go. So you can see that it plotted, these are -2, -2, and -2, -6. And then this is 1, 6 here, 1, -8 there. And then here we have the 3, 5. And here we have the 7, 8. So you can see there's a lot of power in doing this. And what you've done is you've created a program that will take an arbitrary number of points and plot them for you without error. And so we have one more video left where we're going to look at being able to put equations into the y equal and then choosing your window. And that lesson is really interesting and really important because choosing windows I think is one of the hardest things for students to do. Thank you.